into my thoughts and action and then be returned back to me. It is law. It's law. Intention. Your intention is always one with the law. Meaning, before you even think about a thing, you have an intention for the thing. And that the intention is going to determine the outcome. You get to be the master of your own fate. You get to be the captain of your own soul. And if you just manage that, if you just took care of your territory, oh, glorious, 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 wondrous opportunities and possibilities that are waiting for you. So the question is, what are you resisting? What are you pushing against? What are you not allowing? What are you blocking? Because you have this idea of who and what you're supposed to be. Instead of leaning into the dream that's already been created and for you. It's waiting for you. And the second, it's an instant thing. It's a shift in the way you see yourself and the power from which you have come.
I feel like I'm in some powerful co-ministry this morning with some powerful sisters, beginning with Reverend Oprah. And of course, Sharon D. Henderson. Let me not leave out the backup singers, Brandis McKenzie and David Walker. Thank you so much. So good morning, first of all. It is absolutely wonderful to be able to speak at Heart and Soul again. It's wonderful on a couple of levels. First of all, I love being here. I love being available to serve in this way. And I also love the fact that all of us enable our senior and founding minister, Reverend Andrea Earl, to have time off, to be able to rest. And I can say with absolute assurance today that she is resting. She's on vacation. She's not going to pop in and be sitting in the back with the glasses with the nose mustache. She's somewhere else. I don't even know where. I make it a point of when she goes on vacation of not knowing, so there's deniable plausibility if anything comes up. I don't know. We're going to have to figure it out. And it's good for her to have that level of freedom in the world to rest. If you were here for the announcements today, how many, let me ask the reverse question. How many missed the announcements? Because come on, get the face up. Okay. So you get to stay after class. There are announcements on the back end. But my point is that if you were here for the announcements, you saw how much is happening here at Heart and Soul Center of Life. An amazing array of stuff over the next 6 to 8 weeks will be unfolding major event on top of major event, and it all centers around this monumental occasion of this being, we're closing in on the end of our 10th year in ministry. Heart and Soul Center of Light on November 4th will be exactly 10 years old. A decade of faith is what has brought us all this way. And of course, we opened with Oprah for a reason. Oprah's talking about intention. And so the question begs to be asked, what is our intention for Heart and Soul Center of Light moving into our next decade? We've got to decide that. And so we'll talk about intention today. And we've been taken to such an amazing beginning by Sharon D. Henderson and reflection, because being divinely guided, walking with that knowingness, has something to do with the power of intention. drawing down on an intention for only good and allowing that guidance to carry us forward into our greatest yet to be. Am I making sense on this?
Yes.
Good, because that's where we're going to focus today. I've been reading or rereading this book, The Power of Intention. Let me just say a word about Wayne W. Dyer. I first encountered Wayne Dyer as a very young man. He had just released his, I think it's his landmark book, Your Erroneous Zones. How many remember that book? That book completely unhinged me and transformed my life. It was probably my first foray into New Thought without me knowing to give it that name. And I began to imagine the world as fundamentally different, and my place in it, as fundamentally different than I had been imagining it. And so Dr. Dyer has, I've been following his career, or followed his career, for the remainder of his life. I miss him very much. But his writings and his talks are so not only inspirational, but steeped in truth and faith, that they stand today as brilliant as they ever were when he was walking amongst us. So we want to talk about this book, The Power of Intention. Let me say something about intention. You know, it's easy to trot out that word. We've got to walk with intention now. This is our 10th year. And what does intention mean? You know, most of us can have varying ideas about intention. And they can be, those ideas can be different from one person to another, and fraught with a level of, I want to say, kind of like tension. Kind of like, I got to bear down. I got to concentrate on my intention. It never feels like, maybe I'll just speak for myself. My former embrace of intention was never a relaxed thing. It was a thing that was fraught with some tension and some focus, and if I just, let my attention waver for a moment, we've said it over and over. Keep your attention on your intention. If I let my intention waver for a moment, everything's going to dissipate, and I'll be back at square one. And so there was always that, and there's more. So why don't we do a clip, Geneva, please? The question is really, what is an intention? So we want to be on a common ground of understanding what we're talking about this morning as we encounter intention during this auspicious time of our 10th anniversary. And if we go forward, one, nice blank screen, I like that. It's a nice clean slate to start. But thinking about intention, I know that one of the ideas that can come up, one of the feeling tones, is that intention involves just strength of will, just raw willpower, and some sheer determination of purpose. Yeah, there's got to be that. I've got to be just really focused and determined that this is going to happen. This is my intention is girded by my determination, and it involves some buckling down. I've got to buckle down. I've got to put everything else aside and really just, stay on top of this, because it might get away from me if I don't. And my intention probably involves some prolonged effort. It might take a while, and I'm just going to have to be, patient with it, and I might have to just grit it out. Because who knows, intention might involve some rough and hairy and scary places, some scabs on the knees, and I need to be willing to endure that hardship, or any amount of hardship that might come about as I keep my focus and my tight grasp on intention. And I, of course, need to make a calculated plan because I need to plan around this intention. It requires a plan. A to B diagrams and Excel spreadsheets are always part of that. And I need to achieve my intention by any means necessary, regardless of who gets hurt, regardless if I get hurt, whatever it takes. And I'm going to take detailed notes because notes are always useful when it comes to intention. And my intention must be realized at all costs. I'm not suggesting that all of these feelings, or all of these feeling tones, are what all of us always feel when we think about having an intention. I'm saying that along the continuum, at least in my life, I have been at all of these places at one time or another when claiming an intention. It's never been an easy kind of like walk in the park. It's always been like I'm straining. I'm imagining, I saw a picture once of Arnold Schwarzenegger in his youth when he's in a pose, and you can see every striation of muscle. I mean, it takes something to make those muscles apparent, and that was how I was holding on to intention with all of this stuff and not nearly the physique. Yeah, does that look familiar? Look like a lot of us hold on to intention in that way. Holding a tiger by the tail, despite the fact that that's fraught with a lot of problems, right? In and of itself. Because, it's saying, even if I'm at a point of peril, I'm still going to hold on to this thing. I dare not let it go, and I absolutely will win at all costs, as we mentioned a moment ago. As I mentioned also, this pretty much matched how I have been in the world until revisiting Dr. Dyer's book, The Power of Intention. And he offers an alternative view, which, although I had read the book before, it's like I read it for the first time this time, and it really hit me. And this is so on time with all that we're up to at Heart and Soul. He says, now just imagine this. He says, imagine that intention is not something that you do. It's not something that you have to strain and hold on to and to go for at any cost and, all of that. But rather, it is a force. It is an energy. It is infinite, dynamic, spiritual energy. When I say dynamic, I mean it is responsive to us in some way. And it exists in the universe as an invisible field. How often have you heard me mention, for those of you who have seen me talk before, about an invisible and intangible field, an invisible, formless field of energy and information that is always at our behest. He talks about where he was at this point of writing this book. He says he's excited about realizing that this is a long obscured truth about what intention really is. And he says, I know that intention is a force that we all have within us. This is enormously important. Because if intention itself represents infinite possibility in the mind of God, and we are one with that, we have it within us, it flows all around us and through us, and it is us and everything else, how can we lose? He says it is a field of energy that flows beyond the reach of our normal, everyday, habitual patterns. Yeah, I'm deliberately letting that one sink in. Our normal, my normal, everyday, habitual patterns have been my downfall on many occasions. Some of you have taken the foundations class, yeah? So in the foundations class, there is this story, I think it's called Life in 5 Chapters. Some of you may remember it. For those who don't, I'll tell it briefly. So, chapter 1, I walk down the street. There's a hole in the street. I don't see it, and I fall in. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's that hole again. I see it this time, but I fall in anyway. Chapter 3, I'm walking down the same street. I see the hole that I've fallen into twice. I know that it's there. I know that I have fallen into it. But I fall into it again. What can I say? It's a habit. Yeah. Chapter 4. I'm walking down the same street. I see the hole in the middle of the street. This thing has gotten me 3 times. And I know that the hole is there. And somehow I wander into the hole again, and it takes me a while to get out. Chapter 5, I walk down a different street. We have the means of attracting energy to us to experience life in an exciting new way by making a new choice. That's what that story is saying. Simple enough, it reflects how the universe responds to us. When I say the universe, I mean this formless, invisible, intangible, infinitely powerful, dynamic energy, which is all information in the mind of God, springs into being, springs into our, whatever we're calling it into. And, well, let's just go to the next slide. Yeah, because the real question is, all right, so how does that happen? How does it happen that we're able to draw down on this infinite power? How do we draw down on this force, this energy that supposedly intention is? And intention is, I mean, we could just say the mind of God. Well, there are 2 catalytic agents. And so when I say catalytic, what I'm really saying is, you know how there are 2 things, you put them together and something happens? So think of fire, right? Think of fire and the fuel that fire requires. So let's say the fuel is kind of like this infinite repository of energy and information, and is the mind of God. That's the fuel. And fire, at least on this planet, requires a couple more things. It requires sufficient heat, and it requires oxygen. You have to have oxygen, otherwise it won't burn. I don't know how things burn in other places, but on Earth, you have to have high enough heat, fuel, and oxygen in order for that combustible blaze of plasma to come up. Well, the catalytic agents that always attract infinitely powerful creative energy of God to us is 1, belief. Okay, it's gotten mighty quiet in here. Yeah. It's gotten quiet because every one of us realize that this is totally in our control. Mm-hmm. It's not as if I said, well, you've got to pass a master's level class on quantum physics. No, I said, all you have to do is believe. The other catalytic agent is desire. Belief and desire are the key to being able to attract, download, and use infinite God energy, infinite divine energy. Let's talk about, for a minute, how these 2 interrelate. So belief and desire are kind of like interrelated. It's not like they're 2 separate things, one in this corner and one in that corner, and then they come into the middle and fight it out. It's really that they are aspects of a dynamic. So if we click once again, Geneva is so on it, isn't she? Thank you, Geneva. Ernest Holmes, in his signature work, The Science of Mind, says that faith, which in my mind is just belief, belief on steroids, is a mental attitude that is so convinced of its own idea that any contradiction is unthinkable and impossible. It's not possible for that to not be so. That's what deep, deep belief is. Deep belief that is that deep is actually a knowing. And when you know something to that level of belief, things tend to shift right away. He goes on to say that our mental acceptances, meaning that which we have come to believe, always should be filled with conviction, warmth, color, and imagination. He's calling us to realize that those qualities of feeling and expression do something incredibly important to belief. It makes belief vivid. It makes belief have form and be really impressionable on our memory and exciting. His other great book, this is maybe my favorite Ernest Holmes book, is called This Thing Called You. I don't know if we have any copies in the gift shop. I'm sure if you request it enough, they'll start getting some copies in there. I'm just saying. But Ernest Holmes says, every desire you have for betterment in life is some echo from deep within you, from deep within that mind of God that is operating in, through, and as you, from deep within this powerful spiritual reservoir of energy and information. All of that is proclaiming, behold, I make all things new. All of that is saying nothing is impossible if you believe and if you want it, if you really desire it. He says, Ernest Holmes, divine feeling, fire, imagination, and creativity may be expressed through you. If you have ever wondered why you are here, that's it. Wonder no more. You have been called here to dream into existence through your desire and your belief. That which may be expressed through you. You are here to express stuff. And when I say express, I mean create. We are co-creators with the divine. That is who we are. The Spirit comes to us with fresh and new creativity, offering us new ideas, but they're not really new. All ideas have existed beyond time and space in the mind of God. We simply download them, we bring them forward.
Yes.
And so, there are other ways in looking at this idea of a transmutation of energy through intention. This lady here is Loretta Bruning, PhD. She is the founder of the Inner Mammal Institute, and she's a professor emerita of management at Cal State University, East Bay. And she has another way of looking at, well, what she studies is how electricity moves through electrical neural patterns in the mind of mammals. You got to study something in college, I guess. So, what she says, but we can make the translation here into what we have been talking about. She says, intention is the human ability to redirect, and I'm going to trade out electricity to be thought. It's the human ability to redirect thoughts in your mind instead of just letting the thoughts flow down a path of least resistance. What is the path of least resistance in our thought? When we have a brilliant idea and eventually come to say, well, that's really not what everybody else is doing. Let me do what they're doing. That's the path of least resistance. Or, well, there probably just isn't enough money, enough time, enough energy, enough interest. That's another path of least resistance, where we somehow allow our power, our inherent power, to be diffused into this sort of lackadaisical understanding of who we are until our grace of an intention becomes so dispersed that, well, it's just not there anymore. She says that animals don't have this human ability to redirect thoughts in their thought systems. That the world reaches their senses basically through instinct, and flows into paths paved by past experience, and that's largely true. And we humans, as I've just talked about, can do the same. We can rely on more an instinctive kind of approach, or tell ourselves whatever story kind of fits. However, we can also, and this is the important part, put on the brakes. We can stop that line of thinking that is no longer serving us and divert the flow of those ideas into a different circuit. In other words, we have another idea. And in having another idea, she says, let's call this intention. I intend, I'm drawing from the infinite mind of God, an intention that truly supports who I am in the world, and I correspond with that idea. She says, we can notice the flow of our own thinking and divert it. And that is our superpower. You didn't know you had superpowers, did you? Well, that's the problem. Most of us kind of don't. We're all like Harry Potter being told, you're a wizard, Harry, and he's going, what? No, you really are here as sons and daughters of the divine, imbued with power. What did Yeshua say on that original slide that we read in silence? These things that I do, you can do, and greater. He wasn't just talking. He was making a point that was important to make. But here's the thing, as Reverend Andrea would say. I don't want to take her tagline. In using our superpower, well, considering superpowers in general, what's the one superpower that we think of, that we want, that's the most attractive?
Reading minds.
Somebody said it, flying. Everybody wants to fly. Well, the thing that is really the point is that we can fly. We can fly because if we realize that we are supported by a power that cannot fail, then we know that I fly. I think that our dear sister is going to tell us something about this.
I let it go. I release the things I'm clinging to. I release what's holding me, and I'm falling into God's love. I let it be. There's nothing more for me to do, nothing more to say, and I'm falling into God's love. I feel Spirit holding me, and it is lifting me up high.
meaning nobody's going to get in the way. I intend for something to happen. I'm going to make this work no matter what. Regardless of whatever opposition I encounter, I intend to make it happen. I'd like to offer here to you something that may change the way you look at things completely in terms of this idea of intention. Rather than thinking of intention as something that you are going to do, because the implication behind that is that this is the ego. This is the ego at work. And the part of me that says, I am going to make it happen. I've come to a place in my life now at the age of 63 where I finally realize that I don't write the books. That there's an energy that is working through me, whether you call it source or God or spirit. It doesn't make any difference what you call it. But this energy that is working builds all the bridges and writes all the books and delivers all the speeches. When I was standing back there waiting for the introduction to come out and to begin this program, the words were running through my mind from something I read years ago in A Course in Miracles. It said, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. If you had this knowing that there was a source, that there was something that was available to you that is responsible for all of it. And in the writing of The Power of Intention, I remember sitting down to start this book on a specific day, happened to have been Pearl Harbor Day, December the 7th. And I sat down and I put my left hand on the table and I just surrendered and I let go and I allowed the words to flow through my heart and onto the page. And I don't write with a computer. I don't have one. And I don't have, all of the fancy kinds of, I don't even have a typewriter. I just allow the words to come through me onto the page. And when you learn to surrender and to let go and to realize that intention isn't necessarily something that I do, but something that I connect to. And I'd like to share with you here at the opening a couple of observations, a couple of quotes that I came across as I was preparing to write this book. The first of these quotes is from a person who's been a very powerful and important influence in my life. His name was Carlos Castaneda. In the universe, there is an unmeasurable and indescribable force which those who live of the source call intention. And that absolutely everything that exists in the entire cosmos is attached to intent by a connecting link. And then he goes on to say, sorcerers are not only concerned with understanding and explaining that connecting link, but they are especially concerned with cleansing it of the numbing effects brought about by all of the concerns of living at ordinary levels of consciousness. Very important and powerful words to consider.
Important and powerful indeed. And you have a sense of why this Dr. Dyer so much. He brought a lot. And we're going to take why not take a look at these important and powerful words that he brought to our attention. And by the way, you're not losing it. The thing really is moving. I don't know how that effect happened. I just created the slide and it started, so I enjoy spirit, however spirit shows up. But let's take a look at this. He says, first of all, I want to take a step back because he said something a little later on about sorcerers, right? And what he defines later on in this bit of audio, which was in truth about 51 minutes long, and just edited down to try and capture some salient points. He defines sorcerers as those who live of the source. That's what a sorcerer is. Those who are able, those who are willing to simply allow themselves to divine, to bring forth, to download what is available in the mind of God, what is available as source information. That's what a sorcerer is. And if we go back a slide, he says, in the universe there is this unmeasurable and indescribable force, which we've already described as the mind of God, which all of those sorcerers call intention. Everything that exists, everything, the things you love, the things that annoy you, everything is attached to intent. Remember, we define intention as this infinite energy of all information in the mind of God. Think of it as a river that is everywhere, running through everything. And there's a connecting link. Guess who that connecting link is? That is you. You're the connecting link. And you're not alone, because we're all connected to each other. What's more, we're connected to everything else that ever is, was, or has been. There's no separation in the mind of God. That's what Carlos Castaneda was getting at that so resonated with Wayne Dyer. And ultimately, upon rereading the book, I finally got. Intention is so much bigger than me struggling to hold on to an idea of force a round peg through a square hole. And now, Geneva, if you please, thank you. He goes on to say that sorcerers aren't just concerned with understanding and explaining that connecting link that we're all connected, but that they're especially concerned with cleansing the link, cleansing the connection of numbing effects brought about by all the concerns of living at ordinary levels of consciousness. Ordinary levels of consciousness can have the effect of just dumbing down our senses to the point where we're kind of like not aware. It's that place of whatever. For whatever is a big place and a big space. When we say whatever, it's not like nothing happens. Lots happens in whatever. Whatever it is, but it's hardly intentional. Do you agree? Now, here, the thing that I really want to go to is, well, the question I want to ask is, what really prevents us, all of us, any of us, from being able to activate our superpower that we claim we have? And superpower of being able to create with thought, simply by changing our mind, knowing that that we are imbued with this ability to co-create with the divine. So what keeps us from doing that? We've got a superpower that we don't use? Well, one, ego. I want to hang right here for 1 minute. This one is important to me because it has taken me a while in my life to see how this shows up. I have had the experience, well, let me talk about just lately. Preparing a talk today is not nearly what it used to be. What it is for me now is so much lighter, so much more loving, so much less stress. Years ago, when Reverend Andrea would invite me to speak the word, bring the word, I was, of course, lifted up by the honor. But there was another part of me that was terrified. What will they think of me? What if I'm not dressed right? Or what if I stumble? Suppose I don't remember everything that I'm supposed to remember. What if I don't make sense or sound stupid? A lot of considerations were going through my mind that had me preparing for a talk in a very specific way. It was hugely labor-intensive. It involved all-nighters. And I'm not kidding. There was one talk in particular where I started trying to assemble the talk at about 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. And I was at at my computer until it was literally time and the last moment for me to take a shower in order to then get dressed and come to church. No sleep. No rest. And somehow, that seemed perfectly logical to me. That God's brightest intention for Heart and Soul Center of Life for that Sunday would be a minister completely sleep deprived to show up so overloaded with information and nervous that who knows what's going to happen. But that's ego. Ego had me over-preparing. Ego had me thinking so much about what you would think of me and my performance. This is no longer a performance. This is simply allowing what is to come through. We all know this stuff, but there's something else that prevents us from activating our superpower more reflexively. And when I say reflexively, here's what I'm talking about. Imagine I have a pigeon, just a common, everyday, gray city dove. And I go to the top of the tallest building in Oakland and I throw the pigeon off the roof. The pigeon doesn't have to calculate what to do next. The pigeon does what it is designed to do, what it's built to do. It simply spreads its wing and flies. But I remember many, many years ago, in one of my first jobs, I was a court reporter. And I used to go to various offices to take depositions and things. I remember there was this one lawyer who had a sign on his desk that said, "A bird can fly because it takes itself lightly." By any other word, that is belief. Unbelief will untie our ability to activate that which is already built in us to do. Unbelief will keep the pigeon with his wings pinned to his sides.
Come on now. Come on.
Wow.
Unbelief will draw us into trying to make fire without oxygen, trying to make fire without heat. And there's more. Before I conclude, I just want to own up to this because I have a sense that I'm not alone. There have been so many times where I've come to an intention that, and who knows, maybe I did download, I was downloading from the mind of God a brilliant idea. I'm sure that I must have been. Where else could you get an idea? Except through the mind of God. And initially I was so imbued with enthusiasm and brightness of purpose. And then something happened. I began to doubt. I began to think that, well, maybe I'm not smart enough. Or, I don't have all the degrees that those other people have that are doing this thing really well or attracting a lot of attention. And maybe, it takes a lot of money and I don't have a lot of money. Or you see how it's to unravel and sort of lose its cohesion and its fire. The fire was smothering out because of my unbelief and my doubt, and there have been so many intentions that I have started that have dissipated out into nothing as they just fell flat. And people who knew that I had intended a certain thing didn't even ask about it anymore. It's just like, well, intended, but stuff happens. I want to offer that if I'm not alone in this, it can be easy to then recriminate, to assign shame and blame one's self. I could have done better. I should have done better. I had the $1 million idea, and now somebody else has taken off, and I could have had that job. Look at the idiot that got it. You know, it's that. We begin to beat ourselves up. I beat myself up, thinking you have the gifts and you didn't use them, or you just let it go to seed. I want to invite you to know that there is nothing in the universe that is keeping score, that is tracking and saying, yep, that's right about you. There's nothing that agrees with that except your own power of belief. There is instead that which is within you that knows who you are. The thing is, though, do you know who you are? If you can only remember what we say here in church all the time, there is one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. And that life is my life now. That is the beginning of every science of mind treatment or prayer that we do. That is the formula of bringing ourselves back to sanity to know who we are in the world. Yes. It is from that place that you realize, oh, that's right, I have superpowers.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we can simply allow any other idea to dissipate. We can allow all of those moments of recrimination and blame and shame to just fade, because it all fades into God.
Inside my weakness is the seed of something greater in me, and the shame of not choosing